To date, I've ridden 1,119 different roller coasters across the world. Narrowing that down to only the top 25 has been incredibly hard, as there are so many brilliant coasters out there that deserve recognition. My list includes coasters that I think are the very best at what they do, and deliver vastly different experiences, or have unique features that make them stand out. I suspect people will be surprised by some of the coasters that aren't on my list, and by some of the ones that are, so be prepared for a few controversial opinions and hot takes. Some entries may even contradict older videos I've made, but as I get older, my tastes change and mature, so as of the beginning of 2024, this is my list. I'm Rollercoaster David, and these are the top 25 roller coasters in the world. Number 25, the Flying Dinosaur at Universal Studios Japan. The Flying Dinosaur is a stunning flying coaster with one of the craziest sequence of elements I've experienced. After the swooping first drop, you pull up into an element similar to a zero-G roll, but you rotate round 540 degrees, so you end up plummeting back to the ground with your head facing backwards before pulling up into a Raven turn. It feels absolutely insane when you ride it, especially the bit where you're falling backwards, and that's just the start of the ride. This is a coaster that does things that only a flying coaster could, and it's a wonderful, unique and intense experience. It really makes the most of the flying position as you swoop over treetops, buildings and water, and it's surprisingly intense for a park geared towards the more general market than out-and-out thrill seekers. The pretzel loop is another big highlight of the ride, and to me it's hands down the best flying coaster I've ridden. Number 24. Black Mamba at Phantasialand, Germany. I wanted to include an inverted coaster on my list, and sadly my favourite one, and the best roller coaster in the UK, Nemesis at Alton Towers, has been out of action for the whole year whilst it has a substantial retracking. Instead, I've substituted a coaster that certainly feels inspired by it, Black Mamba at Phantasialand. Inverted coasters are at their best when they stay close to the ground and maximise that feeling of speed as you rush through trenches and tunnels, and Black Mamba does exactly that. This is a ride that I think is best in the front, and gives a great speed rush. It's even improved in recent years, as the area around it has been thoroughly remodelled with new paths and scenery to make it that bit more epic. It's a fantastic ride with a great mix of forces, even if it's somewhat overshadowed by other rides in the park. Here's hoping the retrack of Nemesis will be a big success, and it'll reclaim its place in my top list next year. Number 23, X2 at Magic Mountain, USA. Now, few coasters scare me these days, but I can't help but feel a bit nervous and intimidated going up the lift hill of X2. This 4D coaster has seats that rotate independently of what the track is doing, and they have a strange restraint that feels quite open and not that secure. As you go up the lift hill backwards, you're never quite sure when the ride's going to start, and you can't see the first drop, and that's something that's sure to get your pulse racing in anticipation. Once you rotate for that first drop, however, it's an out-and-out thrill fest that's fast, forceful and epic. It's apparently a bit of a maintenance nightmare for the park, and it's a shame that the onboard audio that it hasn't been working the last few times I've ridden. It does occasionally run with an impressive fireball effect though that helps to add to the ride's wow factor. It's the only 4D coaster of its kind that I've ridden, and whilst it's a bit rough and would probably be a hard ride to marathon, it's an incredible experience overall, and definitely worthy of being in this list. Number 22, Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point, USA. Magnum is ridiculous. There's few other words that properly describe it, but there we go. It's ridiculous. This was the first complete circuit roller coaster to break the 200-foot barrier, and was designed in a time before computers were used to figure out how to do it properly. As such, the airtime hills it has are ludicrous, and you can't help but laugh when riding this coaster. The back-to-back Dorito-shaped hills at the end of the ride give insane airtime, where it almost feels like someone's flicking a switch on and off with strong negative Gs that's unlike anything you'll experience on modern airtime-focused coasters. I've ridden all the other Arrow and Morgan hypercoasters still in existence, but none of them come close to Magnum's brutal airtime. If you want a wild ride, it will definitely deliver. It's a wonderful, completely ridiculous ride. Number 21, The Beast, at Kings Island, USA. The Beast is a very special coaster. It's the longest wooden coaster in the world, and has a layout that's unlike anything else, which makes it quite strange. This coaster doesn't have airtime, it's not got lots of massive drops, and it's not got lots of tight twists or turns. To tell the truth, my first ride on the Beast left me rather underwhelmed and disappointed, as there are a lot of very noticeable trims on the ride that slow it down, and it lacks the features I usually like on a coaster. So why is it in my top 25? The Beast is a coaster that grew on me, and the more I've ridden it, the more I appreciate it. It's a coaster that's not about individual parts, but more of a ride that takes you on a journey, leaving the theme park behind you and taking you out into the woods. The Beast is a strange sensation of getting faster and building up speed, without seeming to drop in height. There's several tunnels along the ride too, which frequently echo with the screams of riders. Then there's the ride's finale, and what a finale it is. At the top of the second lift, you go into a drop where once again you feel a trim just holding you back as if the ride's toying with you. Then the train's fully released to dive straight into an insane high-speed double helix through 2 tunnels. The sensation of this is almost overwhelming, with the noise of the train and screams of the riders amplified by the tunnels and the darkness they provide, resulting in an assault on your senses like no other. The intensity of this ending section is incredible, and it's simply breathtaking before it hurls you out into the final straight section back to the station. The Beast is best experienced at night, and the park is justifiably proud of the legendary night rides it provides, lit only by the flashes of fireflies as you roar past into the darkness. Number 20, Iron Rattler, at Six Flags Fiesta Texas, USA. Iron Rattler is a rather special coaster for a few reasons. It's the first hybrid coaster on this list, and originally existed as a wooden coaster before being completely redone by manufacturer RMC with steel track, but what makes it most unique is its setting. The coaster is built partially on the side of a cliff edge of an old quarry, and at several points it dives over the edge so you rush past the vertical rock face. It was the first RMC coaster to feature an inversion, and it's a wonderfully floaty 0G roll. The rest of the ride has lots of fun airtime in a variety of directions, with the twisty overbanks giving a wild, out-of-control sensation. It's got a memorable ending too, where you dive over the edge of the cliff at high speed into a pitch-black tunnel before breaking out into daylight again, and you hit the ride's brakes. Just be sure to ride this coaster once it's warmed up, as if it's running cold it can feel a bit slow during the sections at the top of the quarry, but once this is fully warmed up, it's legendary. Number 19, Ride to Happiness at Plopsaland de Pan, Belgium. After riding over 1,000 coasters, it takes a lot to surprise me, and this was the last coaster that genuinely surprised me and gave me an experience unlike anything else I'd ever ridden. I've been on plenty of spinning coasters and launch coasters before, but nothing quite like this. There's some brilliant airtime, and the layout is packed with great elements that feel completely different in spinning cars. Even the vertical loop feels amazing on this ride, as you may experience it backwards, forwards, sideways, or any other direction thanks to the spinning trains. You might be worried that the spinning could make you feel a bit nauseous, but it seems to have been fine-tuned by manufacturer Mack so that it never gets too uncomfortable, and instead, no matter what direction you're facing on whatever part of the track, it's always enjoyable. The Ride to Happiness is beautifully themed and has an awesome onboard soundtrack where the music syncs up to different sections of the track, and it really immerses you in the ride. I was really surprised by just how good this coaster was after riding it, and hope to see many more coasters like it in the future. Number 18, Sky Rush at Hershey Park, USA. Okay, so the thigh crush is real, and the restraints on this coaster kinda suck, but despite that, it's an awesome ride. The first drop is spectacular, especially in the back row during a night ride, where you can't see the bottom as you're yeeted out of your seat. The rest of the ride has some insanely strong airtime and a relentless pace where the coaster tears around the track through tight positive G turns and sharp ejector hills. It's a great example of manufacturer Intamin pushing the envelope of what's possible in roller coasters, and maybe going a bit too far, but that's why I love their rides. Whilst the lap bar part of the restraints are uncomfortable and get excessively tight in your legs, the upper part gives an incredible amount of freedom and a feeling of openness which might be a bit scary to the general public, but it's something I appreciate as an enthusiast. If you're crazy about roller coasters, you need to experience the airtime on Skyrush. It's amazing. Number 17, Taiga at Linnanmäki, Finland. Taiga is a coaster I haven't covered on this channel before, and a full review video will be coming soon, but suffice to say, it's a brilliant ride. It's got a great mix of airtime, fast twists and drops, and a few inversions with satisfying launches to boot. The top hat offers great views over Helsinki, although it doesn't quite give as much airtime as I'd like. The 0G stall is epic, and the ride has great pacing where it keeps some of the most intense parts till near the end when you think the ride hasn't got much more to give, and then it ramps it up another notch. It's definitely a coaster you need to ride. Number 16, Conda at Walibi, Belgium. Conda is the newest hypercoaster style design from Intamin to open, and it's really rather good. The first drop is awesome, and the airtime hill that follows gives wonderful sustained strong negative G. It has some interesting elements to follow as well, with a massive floaty outward banked hill and an element they've called a non-inverting cobra roll, which provides some really interesting sensations. There's a good mix of floater and ejector airtime, and whilst there's a small section of awkwardly twisted track I dislike, the ride as a whole is stellar and easily the best in the country. Number 15, Velocicoaster at Islands of Adventure, USA. Velocicoaster is a thoroughly modern ride with a combination of amazing theming and a very re-rideable layout with a solid mix of airtime, inversions and twists. It operates incredibly efficiently as well, which is needed as it's at one of the busiest parks in the world. The queue line and theming are beautiful, and whilst the concept of a ride through a velociraptor paddock is inherently dumb, it's executed brilliantly, with great use of themed rock work to make the ride seem faster, as you're always so close to the scenery as it rushes by. It's a ride of two halves, with the first part being a tight and twisty section, and the second being more open and drawn out, with an emphasis on speed. It's got great variety and pacing, and the finale of the Mosasaurus roll is quite simply amazing. Number 14, T-Express at Everland, South Korea. T-Express is often described as a combination of El Toro and Boulder, and that's because the second half of it is literally the layout of Boulder, another Intamin roller coaster located at Liseberg in Sweden. In another world, it could have been called Boulder XXL. One difference though is that on T-Express, the Boulder track layout is taken significantly faster, which means stronger airtime and better pacing, and an overall more intense ride. Before the boulder section is an awesome first drop and a huge ejector airtime hill, which make it a breathtaking ride. It's been several years since I've been to South Korea, but I'd love to go back and experience this ride again, especially as it's getting some extensive retracking this off-season. Number 13, Ari Force 1 at Funspot America, Atlanta, USA. I came very close to getting spited by this coaster last year, but thankfully it opened up and I got to ride this insane coaster. Simply put, it has incredible airtime and one of the most insane inversions around, the arcade roll, which is taken so fast that it just flies past in a blur. The other inversions are fun and floaty too, and it's a ride which really ramps up the intensity all the way to the end. In fact, the ending is almost borderline a bit too much, where you have a barrage of airtime hills, but it's just crazy enough to work well for me. The queue never seems to get very big either, and when I went you could just stay on for as many laps as your body could handle. It may not be RMC's biggest coaster, but it's definitely one of their best. Number 12, Zadra at Energylandia, Poland. Speaking of RMC's biggest coaster, this may or may not be it, as there have been several heights reported for it all around the 206 foot mark. Zadra is an amazing ride and has a great mix of airtime and intensity. The inversions feel amazing, the airtime is strong, and it hauls around the track at breakneck speed all the way into the brake run. There aren't any dull moments on the ride, and it looks suitably giant and epic from any angle. Zadra is a beast of a ride. Just ignore the marketing that says it's a wooden coaster when it's clearly got steel track. Number 11, Shambala at Portaventura, Spain. If it wasn't for Shambala, my life would be very different. It's the coaster that started my addiction, and I still remember the feeling of elation I had after riding it for the very first time. This is manufacturer B&M's best hypercoaster, and every ride delivers wonderful sustained floater air that makes you feel like you're flying. The beautiful theming and colour scheme make this coaster really stand out, but it's a sublime sustained airtime that does it for me, and I could easily ride this coaster all day with a huge smile on my face. There are lots of other B&M hypercoasters that are worthy of being on this list, but I think Shambala gives an overall better ride than any of them, and it only narrowly missed out on being in the top 10. Number 10. Helix at Liseberg, Sweden. Helix is a fantastic coaster that's got a great layout that's all the better because of its location on the side of a hill within the park. This makes it a kind of terrain coaster, but there are some extra special bits that really make the ride stand out. My favourite part of the ride is probably the awesome ejector airtime hill after the second launch. This gives incredibly powerful negative G and a stunning view out over Gothenburg at the same time. The launches on Helix are admittedly a bit on the weak side, but the rest of the ride makes up for that with a varied layout featuring inversions, twists, and great overall pacing. Number 9. Steel Dragon 2000 at Nagashima Spa Land, Japan. The longest coaster in the world and a real speed monster with some absolutely awesome airtime. This is one of the most imposing and impressive roller coaster structures ever built, and it's quite the sight to behold. It had to have extra supports built in it to be able to handle earthquakes that would affect the region, so it looks absolutely stunning. The first drop on Steel Dragon 2000 is quite simply fantastic, and you really feel the ride's speed for the whole duration. The first airtime hill is also absolutely massive, and the journey back to the station has so many back-to-back airtime hills that you could easily lose count. By modern standards, its layout may be a bit dated, but to me, it's a classic and a really epic coaster to ride. Number 8. Iron Guazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa, USA. Iron Guazi is a beast of a coaster, with the steepest drop of any hybrid and a layout that's filled with interesting twists, airtime moments and inversions. A big highlight for me is the death roll, a downward spiral that feels incredible as it rapidly twists you head over heels. This coaster is easily recognisable by its bright purple track, and I know it's got a lot of fans out there that rate it very highly. It's well paced, packed with interesting elements, and save the strongest bits of airtime till the end. An all-round awesome coaster. Number 7. Tatis at Parc Astérix, France. Tatis was probably my most ridden coaster last year, despite living approximately 400 miles away from it, but it's been well worth the journey every time I've gone. Tatis has a bit of everything: powerful launches, backward freefalls, sustained floater airtime, and some awesome ejector airtime as well. It really is the complete package. The triple launch section feels incredibly fast, and the pops of airtime you get along the bottom of it get better and better with each pass. The theming around the ride is beautiful, and the operations are fast and reliable. Tatis really impressed me last year, and I've heard it's led to the park having its most successful season ever, so here's hoping we'll see some similar coasters popping up in the next few years. Number 6. Fury 325 at Carowinds, USA. Fury 325 is one of my all-time favourite rides, and it's got a really great and varied layout. There's an awesome mixture of speed, airtime, and fun twists and turns, but I particularly like the horseshoe turnaround and its wonderful sideways airtime that it gives. Despite its size, nothing's ever too excessive on this coaster though, and most people could ride it multiple times over and over, and it's a ride I'd happily marathon all day. The speed sensation is amplified by the low to the ground sections, and the whole ride is just silky smooth. The queue line always moves quickly as well, as Fury usually runs 3 high capacity trains. It's stunning to look at, awesome to ride, and an all-round brilliant coaster. Number 5. Taran at Phantasialand, Germany. At the time of writing this list, this is the most recent coaster I've ridden, and there could well be some recency bias here, but the last ride I had was a night ride, and Taran at night is something else entirely. By day, this is a fantastic coaster with breathtaking theming, a beautiful soundtrack, and a satisfying long layout with a variety of positive and negative G-forces. but by night, it fully comes alive. The lighting looks absolutely stunning, the launches feel faster, the chill wind in your face heightens the sensations, and the sound it makes as it goes through the launches makes it a feast for all the senses. Walking around the incredibly themed Klugheim area with its epic orchestral soundtrack always puts a smile on my face, and the occasional roar of the ride's launch just adds to my anticipation to ride. Taran is epic, and the perfect combination of an awesome ride, awesome theming, awesome soundscape, which makes it even better than the sum of its parts, and transforms it into one of the best coasters in the entire world. Number 4. El Toro, at Six Flags Great Adventure, USA. El Toro hasn't had the best couple of years recently, with a few incidents leading to prolonged closures, but I remember this ride having a phenomenal experience. First time I rode, I remember going up the lift hill and looking over at that insane 76-degree drop and thinking that's far too steep for a wooden coaster. The drop is incredible though, and it feels like it's got an extra kick on the way down to make the airtime even stronger. The first two hills give absolutely amazing strong ejector airtime that make you want to throw your hands up in the air, as the only thing holding you in is a surprisingly comfortable lap bar. These two hills alone are epic, but the rest of the ride is great too when the coaster's running at full speed. The Rolling Thunder, or Rotting Lumber Hill as it's sometimes known, gives a briefer but incredibly strong bit of ejector air, and the Spaghetti Bowl finale at the end has high-speed twists and turns that add to the variety of the ride. To me, this is the best wooden roller coaster in the world. Number 3. Hyperion, at Energylandia, Poland. I'm well aware that this list has got a lot of Intamin coasters, and this is one of their finest, and to me it almost feels like their greatest hits thrown together into one coaster. It's the first airtime hill that's particularly good though. It's simply incredible and it's got some of the best sustained ejector air you can experience on any coaster. It's a massive coaster as well, with a breathtaking 269-foot drop, not far off from what you'll get in a giga coaster. The layout has a great variety of different elements, which all add something unique to the coaster, ranging from a huge floater airtime hill, a dive drop inversion, or one of the many tight turns that keep the pacing electrifying right until the end. It's a solid mix of everything I love about coasters, and the best ride in the whole of Europe. Number 2. Intimidator 305, at King's Dominion, USA. Intimidator 305 is possibly the most intense roller coaster in the world. It forces you to be present and in the moment for the whole experience, with a super fast lift hill, insane drop, and some simply incredible sustained forces. For some, it's a bit too much, with the first corner even causing people to grey out, but for me, it's a near perfect ride. It feels incredibly fast as it stays low to the ground for most of the track, so you really feel it as the ground rushes past you in a blur. The squeeze of the positive G-force transitioning to negative G airtime is a simply wonderful sensation, and it gives a great head rush. Intimidator 305 is an insane ride, and it's likely we'll never see another coaster quite like it. I'm so glad though that Intamin pushed the envelope this far and created this wonderful, unique, intimidating ride. Number 1. Hakuge, at Nagashima Spa Land, Japan. For a long time, I didn't think anything could ever top Intimidator 305. Then I rode Hakuge. Then I rode it again. And again. And it blew me away. It is such a brilliant coaster, and it's got so much packed into it that I find amazing. The first drop is stunning, the double up is insane, and every element that follows feels nigh on perfect. The 0G roll gives proper floaty 0G, the airtime hills gives decent length pops of airtime, and the whole thing just flows with perfect pacing. After my first ride I remember saying, that's the best ride in Japan. But after my fifth, having experienced the front and back rows, it became clear that this was the best coaster in the world. Hakuge is the perfect mix of inversions, airtime and pacing, to the point where for me, it reaches coaster perfection, and I'm desperate to go back to Japan to ride it again. So that's my list. It's been really hard narrowing down over 1,000 coasters to just 25. I could have easily included more RMCs, B&M Hypers and other great coasters, but I think the ones I put on this list are the absolute pinnacle, and if I included a lot of similar coasters, then I couldn't highlight other coasters I think are worthy of recognition, and show the variety of what this hobby includes. There are a few more coasters I'd love to include in this list, but a top 25 can only have 25 entries, so sadly some rides just didn't quite make it. So if your favourite coaster hasn't been included, it's probably with a bunch of others at number 26 equal. Let me know what you think and what your favourite coaster is in the comments, and if you want to know more about some of the coasters I've featured, then check out my reviews on my channel. I've been Rollercoaster David, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in another video very soon.